What's good, gamers? I've decided to do a Revenant guide because I see a lot of people complaining about how bad the Revenant is in the Deep of Night, and I've done some investigating and I haven't found a single person that has done a guide for the Revenant mostly focusing on the Deep of Night. So that's what we're going to do today. There are obviously guides for the Revenant. Clanky Mocker has done a really good guide, but that mostly focuses on the Revenant, and just in the base game it has no, Deep of Night knowledge in it. Not that he doesn't have the knowledge for Deep of Night, it's just that video specifically doesn't have any Deep of Night knowledge in it. And then you get like the Extra Life videos that are, well,
explosion when you do your ultimate, plus you're using your HP to fully heal nearby allies when you trigger, and makes enemies fill up your gauge faster. The small makeup brush applies two unique effects: continuous HP recovery and more runes from defeating enemies.
So yeah, you get my drift. There's lots of guides out there, some of them aren't great. The only one really that I've watched that is really good is Clanky Mocker's. So I'm going to hopefully give you the best information I can for the Deep of Night and playing the Revenant to make her at least a little bit more playable. Now, I have done some research. There was a Reddit post that I found that covered most of the basics for the Revenant, and then there was also, we jumped over to X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and mostly you just found the weirdos of the community. Not that they're all weird, but there's a lot of weirdos on X when it comes to the Nightreign community. With that being said, let's get into it and let's build the Revenant. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to show you pretty much the two builds that I use for the Revenant. One of them basically just augments her incantations and her faith ability, and the other one essentially turns her into more of a melee character. I know there's a meme going around where the Revenant can now be a melee character, but it is actually pretty good. Now, what do I mean by it's pretty good? First of all, the Revenant herself isn't bad. She's not a bad character. There's nothing bad that she has. Like, she can roll normally, she can deal damage, and yeah, basically every other melee character apart from the Recluse has the same abilities that she does. She can roll, she can deal damage. She has a fairly decent scaling in Arcane, very high faith scaling, and when you add certain relics in, she can have a pretty decent strength relic. So you can just turn her into a melee character and she will be viable. Now, you're probably thinking, why not just play a melee character if you want to play the melee playstyle? And honestly, you're probably right. If you want to play a melee character and deal damage that way, just pick the Raider, the Wilder, Executor, any of them basically, any of the bunch, because they will out damage in terms of melee compared to the Revenant. That being said, the Revenant does have her summons, which can draw aggro and also give you unique buffs. I'll get into the buffs a little bit later on, but the reason why the summons are good, I know they die pretty much straight away all the time, but if you build her this certain way that I'm going to show you, it enables your summons to last a lot longer. Enough yapping, let's look at the first build. So the first build is going to be based around her casting her faith ability. So as you can see in the top relic, we have the power up when fighting alongside family, also the Evergel, and defeating enemies fills more of the arc gauge. Now, the defeating enemies fills more of the arc gauge is really important because that is how you're going to make your summons essentially be able to tank longer. So the whole gist behind it is defeat as many enemies as possible, build your ultimate arc gauge back up, drop a summon. Each summon you drop will give you a unique buff. So Helen gives you healing over time, the Sebastian gives you defenses, and then Fred gives you an attack boost. I think it's of 10%. So drop your summon, use your ultimate ability, and then they're going to last for as long as your ultimate ability lasts, which means you're going to be able to utilize them throughout the game a lot longer than you would normally. So defeating enemies fills more of the arc gauge is really important. Obviously, if you can defeating enemies fills the arc gauge +1. Also have that on because you be able to build your ultimate ability a lot quicker and use it more often. And then obviously the power ups is giving you the buffs for each Revenant, each summon you have summoned. Next one is trigger the Ghost Flame. Obviously that goes without saying. Then the Night Invader is really important because Evergels and Night Invader, they do stack together and they will give you an insane boost. Bottom one, really important, +3 vigor. Never go wrong with vigor. Then obviously at the very bottom, because we're going to be using her improved strength and endurance relic, it reduces the mind. We want to use the bottom relic, the Noster relic, to increase the max FP and also increase when you open the Sorcerer's Rise. Each Sorcerer's Rise you open gives you 18%, and these do stack multiplicatively. Easiest way to understand that is, let's say you have 100 FP, you open a Sorcerer's Rise, you now have 118 FP. If you was to open two Sorcerer's Rise at the same time, you wouldn't get a 36% boost, you would get an 18% boost off 100 FP, and then the next 18% boost would, instead of being off 100, it would also be off 118. So that's how it works. It's not additively, it's multiplicatively. Now, the reason why I don't think the FP is that important for the Revenant is because most of the time, the tools you're going to be using are really low costing FP incantations. So your things like your Discus of Light, Flame of Frenzy, even the Flame of Frenzy stuff, it doesn't take that much FP. It doesn't take more FP than you're going to need when you've got, like, you know, 3 or 4 Starlight Shards is what I'm trying to say. And then you get your things like your Lightning Strike and stuff like that. They're all quite low in terms of FP cost. Obviously, if you're using things like the Dragon Breath and stuff like that, you're going to need more FP, but I wouldn't even advise it because they don't tend to do that much damage. In fact, the only one I think is actually pretty decent is the Rotten Breath, Ezekiel's Breath, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, most of the stuff you're going to be using in terms of casting for the Revenant is going to be low FP costing. Then the next page, as you can see there, we've got the increased max FP upon ability activation. Now you can see I've got that there twice. It's not because it stacks or anything like that. It's just purely because I've got the improved incantations +1 and +2 on each of those relics. Obviously, you want to be using the improved incantations over the school relics for the Deep of Night stuff. Mostly because if you're using, let's say, Frenzied Flame, and you don't find a Frenzied Flame incantation throughout the whole game, you've wasted those buffs. So if you've got the improved incantations, although they are a little bit lower in terms of attack boosting, they will work for every incantation you get. Now, for the base relics, I would always choose the Evergel or the Night Invader over the whatever score you want to use, whether it's the Frenzied Flame or the Dragon Cult, just because you get a boost over the whole of the character rather than just a specific school or a specific type of affinity or whatever you want to call it. So I would always choose the Night Invader or the Evergel stuff. Now, for the Vigor Relic for the Revenant, it actually increases your HP by 100, which is the same as the Dark Knight of the Fathom, which is probably the best relic for increasing HP in the game. Obviously, these stack, so if you wanted even more Vigor, which I'll show you on my next build, put these together, and they do work wonderfully. It will end up giving you essentially as much HP as the Wilder or someone like that, so it is definitely worth using. And for the increased max FP upon ability activation, essentially when you kill an enemy and your necromancy passive activates and the enemy turns into a summon, you get an FP boost. The FP boost is like 0.00075 or something like that. I'll put the numbers on the screen for you, you know, it's easy for you to read. It was recently nerfed in the last update. Whether it's worth using, I'm still not 100% sure. You might be better off just having an increased max FP. I'm only using it because it comes in tandem with the improved incantations +2 and +1. I'm not 100% sure whether it's worth it. So that's pretty much it for this build. This is my casting build. This is the build I will mostly use for the Revenant when I'm using her, especially if it's against someone like Caligo, Libra, someone who's going to be, you know, susceptible to the incantations that you may find for the Revenant. Now, as for the second build, this is the build that everyone thinks is a meme, but it's actually quite strong if you build it correctly. Now, a lot of people will say that this is a meme build, and honestly, they're right, it is a meme build, but as you will be able to see, it is actually viable. Now, for the first base relics, they always stay pretty much the same for me for the Revenant, mostly because the first two are God rolls. Now, the second one, if you're not really too fussed about the Ghost Flame, swap it out for something else, but I would always advise having the Night Invader. And then the bottom one, if I was using her as a caster, I would have the Noster Relic there, but because we're using her as a melee character, we're using the Dark Knight of the Fathom, which you get like a extra 100 HP just for using that relic, continuous HP, and then slowly restores HP when everyone's low. Second page is improved Vigor and Endurance, reduced Mind. We've gone over that previously, but yeah, essentially you get an extra 100 Vigor. Attack power when facing a frostbite afflicted enemy. Now, most of the time you're going to be using like a Duchess, someone's going to be using like a Duchess or someone like that. So there is going to be some frostbite in the vicinity. So you're just getting a bit of extra damage if you do end up fighting someone who is, you know, using frostbite. Or you could use frostbite. Second one is improved strength, reduced faith. Goes without saying, lower your faith, up your strength. Look at the strength! And then the second part of that relic is the partial HP restoration. If you're using a melee character, you should always have this on, if I'm being honest. Then the bottom relic, swap this out for whatever you want. I just like it because it's got more HP and you get Colossal Swords. If we're using her as a melee character, we're going to want to be able to find strong weapons. If we don't have something like this on, you may get decent weapons, but most of the time you're going to be finding seals and stuff. So for me, Colossal Swords, Colossal Weapons, anything like that, just add it into her kit. Now, there's not really much else to say about the Revenant. I have used her all the way up until depth 4. I never tend to use her in depth 5, mostly because Wilder and Duchess are the two that I use the most. It just makes the game a little bit easier. But I do have friends that main the Revenant and play in depth 5, and they are very valuable when they're built correctly. and you're going against the boss that, you know, is susceptible to like incantations and stuff like that. So anyone who tells you that she isn't viable, just build her better. If you build her better, she's going to be viable just as much as any other character. That being said, is she still the worst character in the game? I don't think so. I think you can build her better than you can build, let's say, the Guardian, for instance. Now, is she better than the Guardian? Again, it all depends on how she's built. Every character is better than any character if they're built correctly, if that makes sense. Like the Wilder, if you've got a really crap build, the Revenant can be better than the Wilder if you build him correctly. My point is, no character is awful. It all depends on how you're building them. Each character can be built very well. Each character can have a terrible build and be completely useless throughout the whole run. You've got to decide how you want to play the character, how to build the character, whether you build it, whether you're playing for fun, whether you're playing to actually win, all these scenarios that come into play. Personally, I don't think the Revenant is the worst character, but I am also very aware that her summons and stuff like that need a massive boost. So gamers, that's pretty much all I got to say on the builds that I've shown you for the Revenant. I do think she's very fun to play just because she can be challenging. Obviously, if you're building her correctly, she's less challenging, and she does become fun because, you know, Faith is fun. To be able to cast and use a lot of the Faith incantations, it is very fun. So if you are someone who likes using those kind of things, just build her correctly, you know, give her some defense, give her some HP. Make sure she is, you know, viable if she doesn't have incantations with like the strength relic, so, you know, a bit more damage and helping out the team. Make sure you're using the summons in the correct times. Make sure you're pulling summons back if you can see they're about to die, because they will recover quicker. All these things that you will learn playing the Revenant. It will take a while, but you will learn, and you will see that she is actually a very fun character to use once you kind of get used to how she's supposed to be played. As always, gamers, if you're still here, big love, respect, all that stuff. It helps me out massively when you stay towards the end of the video. I am still doing the Deep of Night Depth 5 runs with randoms. I may or may not have already finished. I just need to edit the videos. But I guess you'll have to wait to find out how long it took me and to see some of the mind-numbing runs that we had throughout the series. I will try and get it all edited as quick as possible, so you get to watch them as quick as possible for the people that are interested in watching anyway. And yeah, if you are interested in that, drop a follow, or maybe catch up on some of the older episodes that I've already released. I think there's like 5 or 6 out at the moment. I've tried to make them as fun as possible, but you know, when you're playing the game, it's quite difficult to try and entertain and also try and keep 2 random players alive at the same time. Or keep myself alive, you know. I didn't always be the one that clutched, so you know, there is that. As always, gamers, catch you on the next one. Big love. Peace.